There's a moment that almost every Linux user, developer, system administrator, ethical hacker, DevOps engineer, or even curious terminal enthusiast experiences sooner or later. You're connected to a remote server through SSH. Maybe you're updating packages. Maybe you're compiling software that takes hours. Maybe you're training a machine learning model, monitoring logs, running Docker containers, editing configuration files, or deploying an application to production. Everything is going perfectly fine until suddenly your internet connection drops. Your laptop battery dies. Your Wi-Fi crashes. Your system freezes. You reconnect to the server only to realize that everything you were doing is gone. The process stopped. The logs disappeared. The session terminated. The work you trusted the terminal with vanished in seconds. And in that exact moment, you discover that the terminal by itself is fragile. Powerful? Yes. Fast? Absolutely. Efficient? Without question. But fragile. And that is the moment when tmux changes everything. Most people think tmux is just another terminal utility. They think it's one of those advanced Linux tools used only by hardcore programmers, with mechanical keyboards and dark-themed setups. They think it's optional, something cool to learn someday. Something that looks impressive in screenshots but isn't truly necessary. That misunderstanding is exactly why so many users waste time every single day without realizing it. Because tmux is not just a terminal multiplexer. It is not merely a productivity tool. It is not just about splitting windows or creating tabs. The real reason you should use tmux is much deeper than that. Tmux gives your terminal permanence. And once you understand that idea, you stop seeing the command line the same way ever again. The terminal session you open normally is temporary. It lives and dies with your terminal emulator. Close the window, lose the session. Disconnect from SSH, lose the process. Restart your machine and everything disappears. But tmux breaks that limitation completely. tmux creates an environment that continues existing independently from your terminal window itself. Your processes keep running, your workflows stay alive. Your shell survives disconnections, your development environment becomes persistent. That one change sounds small until you actually depend on it. Then it becomes impossible to live without. Imagine working on a remote server for 8 hours. You have multiple logs open. One pane monitors CPU usage. Another shows Docker containers. Another runs a backup script. Another edits Nginx configurations. Another watches live traffic requests. Without tmux, you would need multiple SSH windows, multiple tabs, constant organization, and endless context switching. If your connection breaks, chaos follows. But with tmux, everything lives inside one persistent workspace. Disconnect from your laptop, reconnect from another computer, and your entire environment returns exactly as you left it. Same panes, same commands, same output. Same running tasks, same context. It feels almost magical the first time you experience it. This is the reason professionals rely on tmux every day. Not because it looks cool. Not because it's trendy in Linux communities. Not because it's difficult and elite. They use tmux because it solves one of the biggest weaknesses of terminal workflows: fragility. The terminal becomes resilient with tmux. Stable, recoverable, continuous. That single capability changes how you work. The funny thing is that many people approach tmux the wrong way. They start by learning keyboard shortcuts, split panes, create windows, rename sessions, detach, attach. They memorize commands mechanically without understanding why tmux exists in the first place. So the learning process feels painful and confusing. But the moment you realize tmux is about maintaining state, everything suddenly clicks. Every feature makes sense after that. A tmux session is essentially a living workspace. You can leave it running for days, weeks, even months. Developers often maintain long-running tmux sessions on servers continuously. They reconnect whenever needed and continue working instantly. No setup, no reopening applications, no reconstructing workflow. Your environment becomes like a digital office desk that remains exactly as you left it. Think about how much time modern computing wastes through repetition. Open terminal, SSH into server, navigate directories, start monitoring tools, open logs, run development server, reopen editor, restore commands from history, repeat tomorrow, repeat next week, repeat forever. Mux eliminates enormous amounts of repetitive setup work because your workspace persists. You stop rebuilding your environment repeatedly. And once you experience persistent workflows, returning to normal terminals feels primitive. One of the most powerful things about tmux is that it changes your relationship with remote computing. Before tmux, remote servers feel temporary and fragile. You avoid starting long tasks because you fear disconnects. You hesitate before running updates remotely. You babysit processes nervously. With tmux, remote computing suddenly feels local and dependable. You trust the environment because tmux protects continuity. This is why experienced Linux administrators often say something simple but incredibly serious. NEVERSSH into a production server without tmux. That statement might sound dramatic until the day tmux saves hours of work, prevents deployment disasters, or preserves critical processes during a network interruption. Picture a software deployment happening late at night. You're updating a production server. Databases are migrating. Containers are rebuilding. Services are restarting. Suddenly, your home internet disconnects for 30 seconds. Without tmux, panic begins immediately. Did the process stop halfway? Did the migration fail? Is the server broken now? But inside tmux, the process continues safely. You reconnect, reattach your session, and everything keeps moving normally. No damage, no fear, no fear, no fear. That peace of mind alone is enough reason to learn tmux. But the benefits go even deeper. Most operating systems teach users to think visually. Open windows, drag applications, click tabs, rearrange desktops. But terminals work differently. Terminal workflows are sequential, layered, and process-oriented. tmux embraces that philosophy perfectly. Instead of thinking about applications, you think about environments. Instead of focusing on windows, you focus on workflows. A tmux session can represent an entire project. One window for backend logs, another for front-end development, another for Git operations, another for monitoring containers, another for databases. You aren't juggling random terminals anymore. You're managing organized operational spaces. This creates something extremely important for productivity: mental continuity. Human focus is fragile. Every interruption costs energy. Every time you rebuild context, your brain wastes effort remembering what you were doing. tmux dramatically reduces context loss because your environment remains intact. You don't need to remember your workflow every morning because the workflow is already there waiting for you. Many developers underestimate how much mental fatigue comes from environment management rather than actual work. Reopening terminals, reconstructing commands, finding logs again, restoring sessions, recalling where you left off. tmux removes enormous cognitive overhead. And surprisingly, even beginners benefit massively from this. There's a myth that tmux is only for advanced Linux users. That's completely wrong. Beginners arguably benefit even more because tmux protects them from mistakes and interruptions. New users often accidentally close terminals, lose sessions, or interrupt important processes. tmux acts like a safety layer between you and disaster. Even something simple like downloading large files becomes safer inside tmux. Start the download, detach the session, close your laptop, return later, and everything continues normally. That reliability changes how confidently you use the terminal. Another reason tmux becomes addictive is that it scales with your skill level. At first, you may only use basic persistence. Then you discover pane splitting. Suddenly you're viewing logs beside editors, beside monitoring tools simultaneously. Then you learn session management, then synchronized panes. Then custom status bars, then plugins, then automation. tmux grows alongside you. But importantly, you do not need advanced configuration to gain enormous value from tmux. Many users overcomplicate it online. You'll see gigantic custom themes, elaborate scripting systems, highly customized workflows. Those are optional. The real power of tmux exists even in its simplest form. Open tmux. Run your work. Detach. Reconnect later. Everything still exists. That alone is transformative. And perhaps the most beautiful thing about tmux is how lightweight it is. Modern computing often solves problems with huge software stacks, resource-heavy applications, and endless abstractions. tmux solves a fundamental workflow problem using extremely little system resources. It's fast, stable, minimal, efficient. It works beautifully over slow SSH connections. It functions on ancient servers. It integrates naturally with Unix philosophy. That elegance matters. The Unix world has always valued tools that do one thing extremely well: tmux embodies that philosophy perfectly. It doesn't try to become a full desktop environment. It doesn't replace your shell. It simply gives terminal workflows persistence and structure. And once you internalize that concept, you start seeing tmux everywhere. Watch experienced developers on Linux systems. Watch DevOps engineers managing infrastructure. Watch cybersecurity professionals handling remote machines. Watch system administrators maintaining production environments. Mux appears constantly because the people who spend serious time in terminals eventually encounter the same problem. Temporary sessions are unreliable. tmux is the solution. What makes this even more interesting is that tmux changes your hardware flexibility too. Because your sessions live on the server itself, you can move between devices seamlessly. Start work from your desktop. Continue from a laptop. Reconnect from another machine entirely. Your workspace follows you. This becomes incredibly powerful in cloud environments. Modern computing increasingly depends on remote infrastructure. Div.